You have seen this chart maybe 100 times. A line that shoots almost straight up on the left. People who know barely anything about a subject feel almost completely sure of themselves. The line hits a tall peak, then it falls off a cliff, down into a deep dip, and then, slowly, it climbs back up as real skill comes in. The internet even put labels on it. That first tall spike, people call it Mount Stupid. The deep dip after it, the Valley of Despair. And the long climb out, the Slope of Enlightenment. It has become a little map for learning anything at all. And the punchline, the part everyone repeats, is blunt and a little cruel. The less you know, the more sure you feel. This idea has a real name, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it feels true, doesn't it? We can all picture that one person. Loud, certain, and completely, obviously wrong. So the chart went everywhere. News segments, business slide decks, and about 1 million online arguments, usually aimed at someone as a way to say, "You're too dumb to know you're dumb." But here is the twist, and it is a big one. That famous chart, it was never in the study. Dunning and Kruger never drew it, and a large piece of the effect itself may be nothing more than a trick of the math, a shape that appears even when nothing real is going on. We do 3 things. We look at what the science actually found, we show exactly why the meme gets it wrong, and we find the small, honest truth that is still standing at the end. Welcome to Mind Flair with Dr. Jones, where we peel back the layers of human behavior and pull out the finer details of psychology. Let's go back to where this started. 1999. 2 psychologists, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, had a hunch about human beings, that the people who are worst at something might be the very people least able to see it. So they built a set of simple tests. They gave college students quizzes on 3 everyday skills: getting a joke, using good grammar, and thinking through basic logic. Now, how do you grade something like getting a joke? Cleverly. For the humor test, they first had a panel of professional comedians rate a big list of jokes, from not funny at all to very funny. That gave them an expert answer key. Then the students rated the same jokes, and you could see who had a good sense of humor and who did not. After each test, they asked every student one extra question, the key question of the whole study. How do you think you did compared to everyone else here today? Here is what they found. And it is the number the whole world remembers. Look at the students who actually scored at the very bottom, the worst performers in the room. On average, they landed near the floor, better than only about 1 person in 8. But when you asked them to guess, on average, they figured they had beaten around 60% of the room. They were near the bottom, and they felt above the middle. That gap, floor versus above average, is the seed of everything. Dunning and Kruger had an idea for why this happens. Picture it as a double hit. The same skill you need to be good at something is the skill you need to know how good you are. So the worst performers get punished twice. Once for doing poorly, and again because they lack the very tool that would let them notice. To hear that you sing off-key, you need a good ear, which is exactly what an off-key singer is missing. To know your essay is full of grammar mistakes, you need to know grammar. The knife that would cut the truth is the knife they don't have. And they didn't stop at one finding. They pushed on it. In a follow-up, they showed the bottom students other people's answers, including some really good ones, and asked them to judge. The low performers still couldn't tell. They looked at clearly better work and could not see that it was better. But then came the part that really supports the idea. They took the bottom group and simply taught them the skill, a short lesson in logic. And afterward, those same students looked back at their own work and finally saw the truth. Give someone the skill, and their view of themselves snaps into focus. That is a strong clue that skill and self-knowledge really are tied together. So here's the claim stated plainly, the one to keep in your pocket. The Dunning-Kruger effect. The people who are worst at something tend to overrate themselves the most because judging your own skill takes the same ability as having it. That is the idea that took over the world. Now the real work begins, figuring out how much of it actually holds up. Before we take it apart, we have to be honest about why this idea grabbed the whole world by the collar. Because it does explain something we all feel we have seen. The person on their third day of a new job, already sure they could run the place. The friend who watched a few videos and now argues with the doctor. The loud voice in every comment section who has clearly read one headline, and there is a second, quieter reason its spread idea secretly says. You get to sit in the smart chair, a very comfortable chair. Comfortable ideas traveling far. This one leapt from a science journal to jokes conversation in just a few short years. But here is a rule that will serve you for life. In science, the more an idea flatters us and the faster it spreads, the harder we should check it. A story that makes us feel smart is a story we will happily repeat without ever looking under the hood. So a handful of other researchers decided to look under the hood, and what they found is where this whole thing turns. The first crack showed up fast. Just 3 years later, in 2002, another researcher looked at the exact same data and raised his hand and said, "Hold on. Maybe this is not some special flaw hidden inside unskilled people. Maybe it is two very ordinary, very boring things dressed up together to look like one exciting new discovery. Let's take them one at a time, because once you see them, you can't unsee them." Ordinary thing number one, almost everybody thinks they are above average. This is not a guess. It is one of the most repeated findings in all of psychology. Ask a big group of drivers whether they are better than the average driver, and the huge majority raise their hands, which of course cannot be true. Half of everyone has to be below the middle. Same with workers rating their own job skills. Same with teachers rating their own teaching. We nearly all lean a little high on ourselves, so think about what that means for the study. Of course, the worst performers guess too high, because everybody guesses too high. That alone lifts the bottom line up. Ordinary thing number two is sneakier, and it is the one that really matters. It shows up any time a score is part skill and part luck, which is almost every test on Earth. Stay with the simple picture. Imagine a quiz that is half real knowledge, half lucky guessing. Who ends up at the very, very bottom? Not just the least skilled, but the least skilled who also had a bad luck day. The wind was blowing against them. Every coin came up wrong. Now ask those rock bottom people to guess their own rank. Their guess drifts upward toward the middle. And here is the key. It is not because they are blind. It is because their terrible score was partly a fluke, and flukes don't repeat. Their true, typical spot is a bit higher than their worst day. The same thing happens at the top, in reverse. The very highest scores were partly lucky too, so they tend to guess a little lower than their peak. The bottom drifts up, the top drifts down. It happens with any noisy score every single time, to everybody. No special blindness required. So now stack the two together. Everyone rates themselves a bit high, and the extreme scores always slide back toward the middle. Put those two plain, ordinary facts side by side, and out pops a picture that looks a whole lot like Dunning-Kruger. with nobody being uniquely clueless at all. Now, Dunning and Kruger did not just roll over. They pushed back hard and defended their idea. And they had that training result on their side, remember? Which is not so easy to explain away. It became a real, long-running fight in the journals, and that fight cracked the door wide open for the next question. Because if the shape can come from ordinary math, then someone should be able to prove it. Cold. And that is exactly what happened. A group of researchers ran a test so simple it is almost cheeky. They asked one question. What if we take that famous chart, the one everyone treats as proof, and try to build it out of pure, meaningless, random numbers? Here is how you do it, and you can picture every step. Invent a big crowd of pretend people. Give each one a test score by rolling dice. Total randomness, no skill involved. Then give each one a guess about how they did. Roll the dice again. So now every single number in the whole experiment is noise. There is no skill in there. There is no self-knowledge in there. Nothing about these fake people is real or connected to anything. Then you do the one thing the original study did. Line everyone up from worst score to best and draw the picture. And out it comes. The exact same shape everyone knows. The bottom group appears to overrate themselves. The top group appears to underrate themselves from numbers that mean absolutely nothing. Why does this happen? Because of that one move. Sorting people by their score and then comparing that score to a separate guess. The moment you sort by one thing and compare it to another, you bend the picture into this shape on purpose, whether or not anything real is underneath. The chart, in a sense, draws itself. Let's make that gut level. Imagine you rank 100 people by a single coin flip, heads at the top, tails at the bottom. Then you flip a fresh coin for each person's guess. The bottom group, by definition, all flip tails first. But their second coin is random, so on average, it looks better than their first. It has nowhere to go but up. The top group is the mirror image. You have built a perfect scissors chart out of coin flips. It felt like a discovery. It was arithmetic. Now, let's be careful and fair about what this does and does not prove, because this is where people love to overcorrect. It does not prove that people are perfect judges of themselves. They are not. What it proves is narrower, and it is devastating for the meme. The picture everyone passes around as the proof, the chart itself, is not proof of anything. That shape shows up even when there is no effect at all. So if you want to know whether the effect is real, you cannot point at the chart. You have to measure people a smarter way. So that is what careful researchers did next. They went back with better tools, smarter ways to measure whether people really know their own strengths, methods that don't have that sorting trick baked in from the start. One well-known study in 2020 ran the numbers the honest way, on real people. And when they did, the big, dramatic effect mostly shrank away. What was left over was small, far, far smaller than the mountain in the meme. Then another team looked closely at a different question. Not just what people scored, but how sure they actually felt inside. And they found something that turns the cartoon upside down. The low performers were not bursting with confidence. On average, they felt a little less sure of themselves than the top performers did, which is correct. That's the right direction, just not quite as much less as they truly should have. Everybody, top and bottom, was a bit fuzzy about themselves. The worst were not specially, uniquely blind. That neat double hit story did not survive the better test. So which is it? Real effect or pure illusion? And the honest answer, the grown-up answer, is some of both. Remember that training result from the very first study. When you actually teach a low performer the skill, their view of themselves gets sharper. That is real, and it is hard to explain with math tricks alone. So skill and self-knowledge are linked. Dunning and Kruger were onto something true. But the size of it, and the shape of it, and the cruel little story we wrapped around it, that got wildly oversold. The real effect is a quiet ripple. The meme turned it into a tidal wave. Which brings us all the way back to the picture itself. That mountain, Mount Stupid, the Valley of Despair, the slope of enlightenment. And here is the fact that almost nobody knows the one that should stop you cold. That chart is not in the study. Dunning and Kruger never drew it. It does not appear in their 1999 paper. It does not appear in any of the work they did afterward. The most famous graph in pop psychology is not theirs. So where did it come from? It was bolted on years later in blog posts and business slide decks, sometime around 2005, by people trying to make the idea quick and punchy. Someone drew a dramatic cartoon of the concept, added the funny labels, and it spread. What does the real chart from the paper look like? It is gentle and boring by comparison. Two lines that both climb from left to right, with the low group simply sitting a bit too high above the truth. There is no towering peak. There is no crushing valley. There is no roller coaster of the soul. Just two lines and a gap. Sit with what happened there. Somebody drew a cartoon of a real study. The cartoon was more fun than the study. So the cartoon went viral, and then the cartoon replaced the study in the public mind. Millions of people now confidently know the Dunning-Kruger effect from a graph its own authors never made. And if that pattern sounds familiar, it should. It is the exact same thing we watched happen with the 38 witnesses in our last episode. A clean, dramatic, satisfying story runs right past a messy, careful, true one and wins. The myth outruns the science every time because the myth is built to be repeated and the science is built to be checked. Very few people check. So, after all that, is the whole thing fake? No. And this is the part we have to get exactly right, because it would be easy to walk away with the wrong lesson twice in a row. Something real is still standing here. It is just smaller and much more human than the meme ever let on. Here is what holds up. We are, all of us, shaky judges of ourselves. Most people rate themselves above average at driving, at their job, at being fair, at spotting fake news, and half of them have to be wrong. And yes, on average, the people who know the least about a topic often do overshoot by the most. That basic pattern is real, and it shows up again and again across many different tests. What is false is the cruel cartoon on top of it. The idea that stupid people are uniquely, comically blind, cackling on top of Mount Stupid, while the rest of us see ourselves in crystal clarity. That part was never true. The honest version is gentler, and it does not let any of us off the hook. Everyone is a little overconfident. Everyone's view of themselves is a little blurry, and the extremes always get pulled back toward the middle. It is not a story about idiots. It is a story about people. And this matters far beyond a quiz in a lab, because overconfidence has a bill, and the bill comes due in real life. It is the new investor who is sure this is the one betting money he can't lose. It is the person who watched a video and decides to rewire the outlet himself. It is the driver who is certain he can text and steer at the same time. The gap between how sure we feel and how good we actually are, that gap is where accidents live. But here is the genuinely good news, and it is the most useful thing in this whole episode. That gap is not a fixed feature of dumb people. It is a stage, and you can move through it. Remember the training result? Feedback fixes this. When a beginner gets honest, specific feedback, a teacher, a coach, a hard failure, a real scoreboard, their sense of themselves sharpens fast. The overconfidence of week 1 fades on its own by month 6 if real feedback is allowed to reach you. The danger isn't being a beginner. The danger is being a beginner with no one and nothing to correct you. So how do you actually stay honest with yourself? A few small habits. First, go looking for feedback you can't argue with. A score, a result, a person who will tell you the truth instead of what you want to hear. Second, when you learn just enough about a subject to start seeing how deep it really goes, and you feel that sinking, "oh, I know nothing" feeling, do not run from it. That feeling is not failure. That feeling is progress. It means your eyes are finally open. And third, get in the habit of asking one quiet question about your own strong opinions. How would I know if I were wrong? And that leads to the twist that should keep every one of us honest. Think about how people actually use the Dunning-Kruger effect. Almost always, it is a weapon. You point it at someone you disagree with and say, "Classic Dunning-Kruger. Too dumb to know they're dumb." But sit with that for 1 second. A fast, certain judgment about a chart you have probably never checked, aimed at a person you have already decided is beneath you. That right there is the overconfidence. The meme became the exact thing it was warning about. The person most sure they've escaped the effect is usually standing right on top of the mountain. So the real lesson was never about them. It never is. It is about the space between how sure we feel and how right we truly are. And about how easily one good-looking chart can leap across that space and carry a whole culture along with it. The fix is small and honestly, a little humbling. Hold your confidence a bit more loosely. When you feel most certain, that is exactly the moment to ask how you'd know if you were wrong. And maybe, just maybe, check the chart before you share it. That is what we do here. We take the story you think you know, and we hold it up against the sources. Every study from tonight is linked below. If this made you think, or better yet, if it made you a little less sure, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next Mind Flare.